My name's Linda Bowden. I'm a sculptor and I went to the National Art School and graduated there in '99. I think my first go was '98, but I didn't get in. That was in third year art school, and so I think my first successful entry was '99. I've always enjoyed scaling things up. Even as a kid, I would paint large murals on walls. My mum and dad were very generous in that regard. So the opportunity to scale up a work, you know, because that's how I start. I start with a maquette, a model, to scale it up and, you know, human scale. I like to think of it as human scale, not dominating the person, but something you can be in. And that's the only possibility I know of, to make large-scale works. Plus, you know, my first experience of them as a group, as a team, they're just so warm and loving. I don't think I've ever been in an environment where people are so warm and loving. So that's very attractive to me, of course. Look, also, you know, the chance to exhibit in such an amazing location and to have so many people see your work. It's extraordinary, and why wouldn't I give it a go? It's not my intention to be that. It's just the way it's panned out. I don't know who's close behind. And it was David who pointed out that if I kept going, I'd be the first woman because there was no one else close. I've got on a roll in the last few years. You know, I've exhibited consecutively. The impact has been making work that will withstand the elements and the general public, because I do like to walk on and climb sculpture for some reason. So yes, it has in that regard, that it hasn't altered my work in a sense that when I start with the maquette, the work has to be working, has to be resolved for me. And if it is, and then it gets into Sculpture by the Sea, then we scale up, and then we deal with issues of public safety, I suppose. But only in that regard, making things better so that they withstand the elements, essentially. My preferred materials are timber, and that's why I've got this shed to store the timber in, out of the wet. I love my bandsaw, and I love my drop saw. That's what I work with. Some of the models for Sculpture by the Sea have actually been tiny little works in balsa wood, so that it's not always timber. The last few years have essentially been, yeah, maquettes in timber. I actually consider the recent maquettes I've made, models, to be works in themselves that were begging to be enlarged, but I didn't see them just as models. They were good enough on their own. I don't know if it's in my blood. My dad's father was a carpenter, and on both sides of my mother's relatives, they're all master builders in England, so I inherited some tools, but I don't know if I've inherited that. This mallet is really old. This is my granddad's, on my dad's side, mallet, and I mean, maybe, you know, and look, you know, timber has a story, it has a history to it, and you think, how many people have touched this or how many people have used this? I love the grain of it, I love the warmth of it, I love the colours that it comes in. I like that I can manage it on my own. Like big pieces of steel, you need things to hold it up, and you probably need chains and you need men. Whereas large sheets of timber I can generally manage myself. In fact, I've built large-scale work in timber. And often the grain or the colour will suggest something to me for a work, or even just for the colour scheme of the work. I like the idea of recycling timber. Like my latest body of work has been chair legs and things. Grungy old chairs that have been abandoned, I like to give them a new life. The first work that really featured that was 2 years ago, Into the Trees, and that had chair legs that had been enlarged to be trees, in a sense. It was called Into the Trees. That's just been installed. Transfield bought it, and it's just yesterday we installed it down outside the Sydney dance company.
We fell in love with it immediately when we saw it in Sculpture by the Sea a few years ago, and Luca and I just immediately had an attachment to it. We often, between the two of us, don't really understand what we're doing when we select these works of art, except that we like them. And then we find out, sometimes pleasantly to our surprise, as is the case today, that the artist in question actually comes with a formidable track record. In fact, she, Linda, is joining the 10-year club, the first woman to join the 10-year club at Sculpture by the Sea.
It's a lovely completion of a relationship between Transfield and Sculpture by the Sea in a sense, because they're great sponsors. And they bought this work. I wept with joy when I heard they'd bought it. You don't know what this means to me. The main thing for me is you feel like this incredibly important, significant person in the world for 3 weeks. You know, which doesn't happen very often. People say, oh, that's the artist. And you think, oh my God, that's right, that's me. Being in Sculpture by the Sea's given incredible credibility to my life as a sculptor. Like, people who don't know very much about the art scene in Sydney know about Sculpture by the Sea. And to say, oh yes, I've been in it, and yes, I'll be in it again, they say, oh, you must be very good. And you know, the press, I've had a couple of fantastic reviews from a couple of critics, which just, you know, really is the kind of assurance you need from time to time. You don't get it very often. And also I think with other sculptors now, especially joining the Decade Club, you know, I must be the real deal. And I guess it demonstrates to the patrons and philanthropists who might buy my work that I'm here for the long haul. I'm not a fly-by-night. So it's just an extraordinary experience. Look, the other thing about Sculpture by the Sea is it's not just the Bondi thing. You know, I got shortlisted for a commission in Canberra. I didn't get it, but I got it through Sculpture by the Sea. And there's been a few bits and pieces along the way. They've said, Linda, would you be interested in this? And in fact, in 2003, the year my dad died, which was appalling, I got a commission to make the private patron series. And I'd lost my regular day job at that point, and I just was incapable of going for interviews. And so I had this commission, and I worked as an artist for a year. It was just a lifesaver. And it means that, you know, these babies, as I called them, ended up in amazing collections. So people I would never meet or hope to meet, these amazing philanthropists, they have my work in their collection and they know me. So, you know, it's a pretty amazing 12 month a year, you know, it goes all year, Sculpture by the Sea.